Welcome to the inaugural episode of my new blog here at faithandcoffee.com. I'm so excited to be trying out this format, and I hope that you like it also. Join the conversation, and be sure to like us on YouTube and Facebook. I'm up here in Sholo, Arizona, up in the White Mountains, where a friend of ours actually lets me use their cabin, here it is, for what I call, for lack of a better term, my triannual worship planning retreat. Believe it or not, I actually try to plan out about 4 months at a time. I don't always get to all 4 months. I do a lot of reading, a lot of writing, but mostly a lot of praying. It's just beautiful up here, and sometimes I just come up here and I sit and I listen and I pray. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's wonderful, and I love it here. So if you're wondering how I work on these retreats, I thought I would show you my little workspace that I create. This is the dining room table. I have my laptop right here, and I bring an extra monitor to give me more workspace. There's no internet service, but this time I was very lucky, and the owner of the cabin let me use their hotspot, their Verizon hotspot, and it actually kind of works. I couldn't get it working at first, but then I finally got it to work. And it works pretty well, and I'm able to do some simple looking up. I'm able to slowly update the Google Docs that we use at my church to plan. And of course, here's the kitchen. I don't have the lights on, but hopefully you can see it. It's a beautiful kitchen complete with a stove and a fridge, and the all-important coffee maker. So that's my workspace. There's always a fresh pot of coffee going when I'm up here. The fuel of the brain. Just heard a car going by. One of the things that I have been reading about in the upcoming texts, mainly for September, October, is the prophet Jeremiah and Lamentations. Lamentations is a series of poems of the destruction of Jerusalem in 587 BCE by the Babylonians, just prior to the exile. Jeremiah is written in the midst of the exile, speaking to a people who the prophet believes has forsaken God, and looking at what does it mean to be redeemed in the midst of exile. There's something to this Lamentations, this crying out in anguish. Can you imagine being ripped from your family, being ripped from your homeland, from your neighbors, and being pushed into an area, to a place that you don't know? Does that sound at all familiar? Because, well, that's happened here in the United States. Look at what we did with Native Americans. We in the United States are very averse to pain and suffering. We pop a Tylenol when maybe our body is trying to tell us something's wrong, and we need to be paying attention. It's one thing to be popping a pill when you know what the pain is, what's causing the pain. We're masking the pain so that we can focus on healing. But too often we mask the pain of our hearts. There's something to sitting in the anguish, sitting in the suffering. After somebody dies, I've heard many people receive the advice, well, you got to stay busy. You got to stay busy so you don't wallow. But maybe there's something to this wallowing, to this lamenting, crying out to God, saying, why is this happening? Maybe there is something to sitting in that suffering so that the healing can begin. It's not sadistic or masochistic. It's to help us name the suffering, to speak to the reality of the suffering in our lives, so that we might become better people on the other side. So what does that mean for the church today, I wonder? What is the suffering of our nation? What are we struggling with? I look at the divisions in our legislatures, in our neighborhoods. People are afraid to talk to one another. You know the old saying, the two things that you don't want to talk about in mixed company is politics and religion. And yet those two things are at the core of who we are. We are political beings. And anyone who tries to remove themselves from the politics, that is, the conversations around what it means to be in community, what does it look like, what are the values that we're going to hold together, how are we going to shape our society so that people can live in peace. Politics is about those negotiations. That's all. Now we can put the value, the label of good or bad politics, but politics is really neutral. How we engage it and how we choose to go about it adds the value of whether it's positive or negative. And as I look at the presidential election, there's a lot of negative politics going on, but there's also a lot of positive politics. I think there are people in government who are actually trying to do the right thing. They're trying to make our community and our nation better. They're trying to create a space where we can all live in peace with one another and in this increasingly global economy, global society. And I think Scriptures has something to say about that. Maybe we've been trying to medicate ourselves against the real conversations that we need to be having. The fears that we have that maybe there won't be enough for me, so I need to get as much as possible. There's a fear that if I let somebody else in, then gosh, we're going to have to spread things out even thinner. That fear is as old as the Hebrew Scriptures themselves, if not older. We're the wealthiest nation in the world. And yet we have some of the biggest problems when it comes to poverty, incarceration. Why is that? What do the prophets maybe have to say to us? Maybe this is a time when we need to sit and we need to wallow. We need to sit in the suffering of those who are being marginalized, those who are being cut out from the conversations. Maybe we need to feel that suffering a little bit. My wife and I always have that conversation. What do you want to have for dinner tonight? I don't know. We end up making spaghetti or burgers, or sometimes we just order out for pizza. We have the ability to do that, but not everybody does. Am I willing to give up a little bit of my freedom, my capacity, so that someone else can live? I get the fear of becoming a welfare state where we just pay people for doing nothing. I don't think that's a good thing either. In fact, I don't even think that serves well the people who are receiving that welfare. In fact, I think that hurts them and dehumanizes them. But we need to do something to give people a leg up. We need to do something to take care of the people in our community who are mentally ill and don't have the capacity to actually make a living. How do we care for those who don't have the capacity or the ability to do well in school? How do we help them find a place within our society? When I look at the prophets like Jeremiah and Lamentations, Amos and Hosea, the cries on behalf of the poor, the cries on behalf of those who are being trampled by the sandals of the wealthy, I think that's what we need to be paying attention to. And I think the prophets speak to that. Jesus certainly spoke to that. Most of Scripture seems to speak to that, and yet we want to just stay busy so we don't have to deal with it. But it's killing us. It's destroying us, individually, as well as a community, as a nation. So that's what I'm working on.